The worst part about this, as I mentioned in my other video, I think, is that the explanations and the alibis of the players themselves, other players in the scene, other industry people, and the fans of those players do not add up and do not match up and give kind of a plausible or legitimate explanation for what's going on in these clips. Like, they'll say, yeah, it's a coincidence. If it's a coincidence, why so few coincidences for other people? Why certain players who have nearly loads and loads of clips for them and almost next to none for other people? It's not even just that you can say, but that person, everyone thinks he's a cheater, so they keep looking at him. There's certain players who had way worse reps as being onliners and other players suspect them of cheating before aimlock clips existed, that like next to no clips exist for. There's certain players who are incredibly skilled and have a very fast flicking style of motion or actually incredible game sense and do seem to read where their opponent is behind the wall without actually having a wall hack. Even those players don't have as many of those particular clips and aimlock clips. Like, think about Get Right, one of the best of all time at knowing where people are going to be to an almost psychic degree. Where the fuck are all this guy's aimlock clips in the era when he was doing all that and winning mad 1v4s and had like a 60% win rate in 1v2s? Where are the old school clips of like 2013 shocks in very games doing all this banana shit when he was just wrecking people with one taps all over the place, an insane ability to just take over a game from the mid round? Exactly when, if you'd have had all this stuff like this, it would have made the most sense that you'd have the clips of him. And you just can't find these clips back in the day in that particular sense. Some think that people still cheat right now, and yet they will tell me, oh yeah, I know who you were talking about in that video, and they'll tell me that this person cheats. But then I'll go to them and go, actually, it's funny that you say that, because believe it or not, mate, it's people in your team, or it's a teammate, or it's a friend of yours who I think actually cheats. You're thinking of a different person, or I find very suspicious. And so in this scenario, what's amazing, I've seen cognitive dissonance even from the pros. Like, I've seen pros tell me, this person is suspicious, and I look, and it's a very specific type of aim lock, and then the person who's on their team, or another pro that they're friendly with, does the same sort of aim lock, and they're like, oh no, that's nothing actually, that's just an accident. And I'm like, wait a minute, so why are you telling me this guy who you dislike is the cheater in that sense? So you can see the problem in that sense.
So here's the thing. This wasn't just about Alfari, guys. He was the canary in the coal mine on this one, because he was the one who came out and was blunt with the coaching staff. Others in the team also don't like Jack's coaching style, including his game knowledge, his attitude, how he behaves around them, and behaviour specifically while coaching them. Like, I've heard, basically, he's just pointing out tons of mistakes they're doing, but then the player disagrees. Actually, some of them think this feedback is just simply incorrect. It is just wrong what he's saying, and some of his characterizations are just completely off about how people play or aren't playing, or playing in LCS matches, and thus they think Jat's game knowledge and meta read just isn't legit. And by the way, think of some of the players on Team Liquid, guys. Jensen's done it all for a player from that region. MVP player for years and years and years. Top 8 at Worlds. Top 2 at MSI. Then how about CoreJJ? He's only a fucking world champion. Almost twice over, because he was in 2 Worlds finals and was 1 game from winning 2 world championships potentially. Also helped Team Liquid go to the MSI final. Did you enjoy going to the MSI final, Steve Arhanset? I'd suggest you pay attention to the guy who helped you get there, mate. Because maybe he might know a thing or two about the game and how to structure a good team. I thought Jack was really good on camera. I thought he did a really great job with his own game knowledge. Certainly, stuff he presented on camera seemed like he knew a lot about the game and had a deep understanding. So I always thought his predictions were pretty good too. So I actually think, okay, in terms of his work, yeah, it seemed like he's one of the best to ever do it. Here's my issue. I heard a lot of horror stories, because I know all the talent. I heard a lot of horror stories from talent behind the scenes. The kind that get out there, but only in, you know, when you're having a cigar and a brandy and the right conversations go on around the world and that person isn't there. I basically heard when he was talent, he was super difficult to work with. He had a diva-esque attitude. Essentially could just fly off the handle over nothing. Didn't like to be roasted or in any way shown up on the broadcast. By the way, part of your job as part of a show. Sometimes, like WWE, you have to lose this fight, even though in real life you might be able to beat the guy in a fight. It's part of the show. And I also heard he was basically quite controlling, and he used the fact that he had connection to the broadcast riot. That always meant he had sort of a little bit more leverage than you did, potentially. So as a result, when I then hear this stuff from players, it's starting to all match up. I'm starting to go, this is ding, 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 ding. I'm starting to get somewhere here. It's one of the reasons why I used to publicly tease him on Twitter, on my talk shows, because it's just a thing with me. When I see someone's ego get inflated like a balloon, I like to be the little prick that comes along and pops that motherfucker. It's childish, but it has to happen eventually from someone. So I just make it myself who does it. And in doing so, I've made myself a lot of enemies.
Now, in terms of rigging in general, the concept of match fixing, I think you'd be very naive to think this is the first time it's happened.
very naive, even more so, to think it's the first time it's happened with top-level pro players, and even more naive to imagine that this has only happened in North America and that it didn't ever happen in Europe. The reason why I say that is because, first and foremost, in Europe, there has been tons of online CS in leagues where there were matches like this, where you've already qualified for the LAN final, or you're already out of the league, you're not going to qualify for the LAN final, whatever the situation, and you still play a game for the last few weeks where you could make an upset happen by throwing, or whatever the situation is, you could get someone to gamble on it for you. There have been tons of these cases. There have also been tons of exhibition games that were only like $1,000 or $500 for the winner, where based on the amounts we're hearing about these skins, if the odds were right, you could lose. People wouldn't suspect it because they'd be like, oh, well, that team's just online and I guess you just had a bad day. And you'd make more than you would have if you'd won the actual prize, which, by the way, in some of those cases, some of those prizes maybe never even get paid out because some of those companies are dodgy. So unfortunately, the reason why I bring this up is because when you think about it that way, there have been tons and tons of instances, especially in European CS as well, where if people didn't match fix, which we don't know that they did, we don't have any evidence, essentially the situation would be presented where the opportunity would be there, and it's quite unlikely they'd ever get caught if they did it in a smart way and they didn't send fucking texts to people's girlfriends and all that sort of shite.
Those aren't just outside journalists either. Those are people from the gaming press. Now imagine film critics coming out after a mass shooting and saying, oh, it's Hollywood violence that made all these murders happen and these mass tragic killings occur and this violence over there. You know what? It's not ideological. It's just all Hollywood movies. You know what? I'm a film critic, but I think Hollywood should stop making violent movies, and they should stop making it ever be cool to kill people in movies. They should stop never making the hero be the one who kills someone. You just don't see that happen. That's an incredibly rare thing that would happen. And yet this is like mainstream games journalism doing essentially that, the equivalent of that within our industry. It's not outsiders entirely now. I mean, I made my video before, Enemies of Esports, because I wanted to bring in the outside people who do this, like mainstream journalists who just do this because it's a good way to rabble-rouse. It's a good way to quickly like get people excited about a certain topic. Oh, I've got the solution for you here without having to think about it a whole lot. Just raising an issue like, oh, here's something you can do about it now. Ban your kids from playing games. That'll stop them being psychos.
I've seen another side of the esports industry, and I tell you what, it is trash, full of some of the most vapid and valueless people you will ever meet by their own choice. That is who they have crafted themselves to be, and their hierarchy of values does not include things like integrity, like cooperation, ambition, drive. It's all just about what can we get in the short term, and even if I pretend to represent group interests, fuck everyone else. Again, how do I make that just about me and what I'm getting and paying the least and getting the most? So I made that tweet to make it clear publicly what the reasons I'm here for are, and this is more importantly, to make a prediction for you. If those aren't present, you'll see me leave. And when I leave, I'm the canary in the coal mine. That will tell you the toxic fumes are there. In this case, the canary got out before he died. Sucks to be you, right, FP owners? So I wanted to signal also, this is another thing I did with PR that a lot of fans don't understand. I was going to use my PR as a weapon against the Flashpoint owners too. In the same way Phil Jackson used to use the press to motivate and to drive his players to prove him wrong or to do certain things, I'm doing that with press. That's what I was doing. So as a result, I also made that tweet to make it clear to everyone, those fucking Flashpoint owners, you know what, I'm only here for these reasons. If you don't live up to your end, I'll be gone. That's it. I'll do out my yerks. Listen, I believe in honouring your contract, but after that, you'll never get me back again. But you know what? They took action. They changed some key aspects of the top management structure, and so I thought, since it seemed like the right people were now in position, I can double down for this year then. I can give it one last go. We'll double, triple down one more time, and this is it. If they can get it done, they do. We'll also see, by the way, it's also a very short amount of time. To the idea you're going to succeed within 2 tournaments, yeah, it's not going to happen in terms of becoming the best, so it always was going to be a long-term project. So, okay, maybe it can be saved. The problem is this. When they did hire the management of the people like the CEO, they hired them months and months into the project. Like Flashpoint 1 had already happened. And then the management wasn't people who knew the space of esports, by the way. These were people who talked a good game from outside, but they ended up being incompetent, clueless about the industry. They didn't get more sponsors, hence we didn't get the rev. They didn't convince more teams to get more players. They didn't convince more orgs to join. They didn't implement fines. And the people behind B-Site/Flashpoint spent mega bucks on these guys, even though effectively I couldn't show you anything physical on the outside that they did, that they actually had, that was an outcome. In fact, most of the things were things I did for them that would then count for their work. They were paid, we're talking like potentially a lot of money. let's say high six figures into the seven figures, just thrown into a fucking black hole with nothing to show for it, and had to replace some of these people now. Unfortunately, I was frustrated since I feel like on both occasions, I was unable to make any of my points because he kept non-stop hitting me with these interruptions, disagreeing with what I was saying, not even letting me make the premise, and therefore never really letting me feel like I ever got to my point. So as a result, I'd say the premise, he'd disagree immediately, and I could never go anywhere in this particular scenario, which at that point is not even conversation. You're not even discussing anything. That's essentially Destiny, like, auditing and vetting what I say. I mean, imagine if I did that to him in a conversation. He'd never get any points out. I could ruin a show as well. I'm not very good at knowing people's social cues, but even I know that's ridiculously obnoxious and just ruins the show. So unless the other guy's wrecking you in such a hilarious manner that somehow there's some comedy to come out of that, I don't see what the merit in that is, especially when you're the guy getting wrecked, obviously.
Everyone needs a support network, and mine is, of course, my Patreon community, the Screwminati, who, in many ways, they're the Sonny to my Cher, saying, I got you, babe. So this video and all the others on my channel were kindly supported by the following names: Ahmed Haju, Matt Pugnatio Rajcula, Adam Tomlin, Animosity, Jensen Goh, Tosh, Toucan, and you know it. Jerky's Minion, my main man, always going to be referenced, one of the best patrons of all time. Would you like to ask a question in my AMA? Maybe you want to suggest a topic or a guest to say on my channel? Do you want teasers? Find out who the upcoming Reflections and Talk to Thorin interviews are. Maybe you want to do one of those long discussions where you get to set the topics we talk about. Well, if any of these or others appeal to you, put your money where your mouth is. Join the Screwminati today via the Patreon link in the description box below.